So I mulched around this edge recently because when it would get cold, the frame on the greenhouse would actually have ice on it. So I thought, well, you know, there's really no insulation there at all. There's a little bit of insulation on the, you know, the poly there. And so I had the mulch. Why not? So I was drying my boots from yesterday because they got all wet.
All right.
So
8 degrees.
Yeah. So these are moringas.
What's that?
Moringa is a tree that grows in Africa, and they use it as a multivitamin. They eat the leaves, they make powder with the leaves, and it seems to help people heal from diseases and stuff. And so I ordered some seeds. I got about 100 seeds for $8 shipped to me. It took about 3 months to get here. They're not cold hardy. So these, like this here's probably the happiest one. And normally they would probably lose their leaves, but they're trying to grow blossoms and leaves.
Right.
And I have another one. These are 1 year old, but I have another one that's 2 years old, and it's the stalk on it is about that big around, and it grew probably about this tall last summer, something like that. And I started pruning it. If you prune it, you actually get more. So they say every 3 nodes, prune it again, and it will give you another set of branches. So at first I was, I don't want to prune this, I just, you know, I might damage it or something. But you actually get a lot more, and it doesn't really hurt it. So this is turmeric. So we go to the Asian supermarket in Tri-Cities, and we buy fresh turmeric roots. And so I had some, and I planted that one. This one actually stayed warmer. These got a little colder, and so they died back to the ground, but I'm sure they'll be fine. This is ginger. So we had a ginger root that was growing, and we planted that guy. These are sweet potatoes. So normally when we would start sweet potatoes, we would snap the growth off and put it into water, and then it would root. But I was looking online, and there was people that would planted them into dirt directly with no roots. Right. And so I tried that, and it works. So I didn't know that would work. These are some aloe vera I got from a lady in Florida. They're supposed to be a special kind of aloe vera, and I just got them like last summer, and they were little tiny guys, and they're actually doing pretty good.
What's this guy here?
So that is a Meyer lemon, and I don't know what it is, but it's going like crazy. I mean,
got little fruits here, or
yeah. So those are lemons.
Those are lemons.
So those are Meyer lemons.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And I've never seen a lemon tree put on, you know, that many blossoms.
Right.
It's crazy. It likes to be watered every day. It doesn't like it below 50 degrees. So like earlier this spring, Donna had just gotten it and repotted it this spring, and we put it in the pot there, and I was like, oh, I'll water it once a week. And it had some flowers, and it had set some fruit, and all the fruit fell off. And so I'm like, And so I did a little research, and it's like it likes moist soil, and so I just water it every day, and I put, you know, some compost stuff on it, and I mulch on top of it, and it's crazy.
Wow.
This, I don't know the name of this plant, but it's one of Donna's friends has this plant growing in their house, and I didn't plant these. These are seeds that actually fall and they make little babies, and so they dug the baby out and gave it to her, and we've had it for like 3 years or so. We just had it in the house, and you know, we live in a fifth wheel, so it doesn't get much light.
Right.
And it was just sort of sitting there doing nothing. And I brought it outside, and it kind of got sunburnt, and then it would get used to the sun. You know, if it gets accustomed to the sun as the sun increases, it seems to do fine, and it's just kind of a fun little thing to have. It looks kind of weird. These are some lettuces that were left over. We start things in soil blockers, so they're. Let me see past you. Don't know if we have a soil blocker in here. No, we don't. So a soil blocker, it's just you make a solid. It's like a plug almost. You fill this punch that has these little holes in it with soil, and then you press it out, and you just have these little square blocks. And so that keeps us from having to, you know, plastic pots and stuff for when we start a lot of things. So we start in these little tiny soil blocks, and once they get going, then we'll transfer them to a bigger block. The second block has a little space for the first block in it, and you just set it inside, and you can go up bigger. And so we started our tomatoes and stuff like that. And so she had some extra lettuces, and I was feeling sorry for them in those little tiny soil blocks. And so I planted in some bigger pots, and I harvested once off of that already. Some of them did fine, some of them, you know, not the best ever. Stevia. So this is some stevia, and it's actually coming up again from the roots. Normally it would all die back, and it's pretty much died back. I harvested some seeds. I don't know if they will be any good. These here are stevia too, and I harvested those. And I brought them in last year. I didn't bring them in early enough, and they all died. We grow them in like 4 pots or so, and a couple of plants to the pot, and so they all died, and we had to get new plants. And so this year I brought them into the greenhouse, and they're growing up from the ground already, making shoots like crazy. Have you tasted stevia?
I don't believe that I have.
So, pull a little piece off.
That's sweet.
Right. So it's an alternative to sugar, and usually I use it.
Oh, it gets sweeter too.
Usually I use it in combination with sugar.
Yeah.
Or honey or something like that. Well, one thing that's really fun, I don't have any right now, but we fennel. Fennel tastes like licorice. So if you take some fennel and some stevia, just the green plant, the top of the fennel, put it in your mouth and chew it together, it tastes like licorice. It's kind of like a candy. So it's kind of a fun thing. So this is a rosemary, and it's one of my favorite herbs. I really like its flavor, and I mean, it makes really pretty flowers. It's not super hardy. We planted one in the garden, we planted one in a pot, and the one in the pot is like 3 times as big as the one in the garden because it likes the warmth, I think.
Right.
It's from the Mediterranean. That's where it originally came from. And the more you prune it, the more shoots you get. So I started pruning it, and you can see I didn't prune it at all here, but it.
Yeah, at the top.
Yeah. So it's kind of a fun little thing, and.
What do we have back here?
So that is a pepper. I don't know the name of it, but they're little hot guys. They're pretty good flavor. Peppers are actually perennials, they say.
Really?
So those have been in pots all year long. There's a couple more of those behind you.
So like these bright red ones, those ones are ready? Or is it the... Really? So that's as big as they get?
I mean, you can eat peppers when they're green, but I like to eat them when they're ripe.
But that's as big as they get?
That's correct.
Okay.
And those are some other peppers. Like this one here, it's already starting to shrivel up and dry a little bit. They should have been harvested a while ago. This is actually a tobacco. And you can see the blossoms up there. It's supposed to be like a perennial tobacco, so Donna just planted it as a flower. And she had some extra ones that she didn't plant out, and so I've just been kind of nursing them. And that's a tobacco as well.
How come the tobacco ones seem to get all the, gnats or whatever?
Aphids.
Aphids.
I don't know what that is, but the interesting thing is that it seems to kill them. It kills all the aphids. So it might be good to plant these kind of things in our gardens to attract the aphids and dispatch them for us.
I have a few different tobacco seeds that when we get our own property, I'm going to start growing my own. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what they do in pots, you know?
Yeah, that's the place that I got my seeds. That's how he does it in Seattle, right off his balcony.
Nice.
And just grows them sitting there out in the middle of whatever.
So I'm hoping we'll get some seeds. It's fun to grow these different things.
Yeah. It's look at it right there.
Ice plant or something like that. It's succulent. It's, you know, it would be happy in California, but probably not too happy outside. So a friend of mine in California has one in a pot. They do good inside houses. The stalk is, you know, 2 inches across or so, and it's, you know, that tall. So that one's doing pretty good. So these are goji berries. One of the cool things about goji berries is all you have to do is cut the stem and stab it into the soil, and it'll grow more goji berries.
Really?
So I don't do anything, even cold weather. We'll go back out to the garden, but I took some from my plants that are growing out in the garden, and just as I was pruning them, I stabbed them into the soil and they grew leaves. So if they grow leaves, they obviously have some roots there. And so these are goji berries that I started from seed. Started them in little things and transferred them, but 90% of the seeds seemed to sprout that I had.
Right.
So they kind of go dormant. It got a little colder over there, but they're sort of coming back. And goji berries help us produce human growth hormone. So the leaves are actually higher in those plant chemicals than the berries. So they're pleasant. I put them in my smoothies. I put the leaves in salads. They're another thing that's, we don't have to plant every year. And if you want more, just cut some stems off, a couple inches off the ground, and stab them in the soil. And no pests. I mean, we never get aphids on them. We do have aphid problems on brassicas. Sometimes in the fall, the air will just be filled with aphids. I don't know where they come from, but they only land on our brassica family plants, our kales and cabbages and, broccolis. So it's good to have other things, so you're not always relying on, all my kale's dead, now what do I eat?
Right. And this is what you're using to heat the bowl?
Yeah, so that one, and when it's really cold, I run this one. But it's, it's obviously warmer. It doesn't really need to be any warmer than like 50 to 60 degrees in here in the day. 50 degrees, it's nice to keep it at 50, but when it was really cold, it was, like I said, around 9 degrees. It would get down to about 48 or so in here. And the heaters just couldn't do any more than that. Right. But it was still fine, and the lemon's still fine. Those are actually quince seeds. I picked some quince fruit. These are quince here, you might get a better picture. And I just, I rinsed the quince seeds. They're like gelatinous. People used quince in the old days when you couldn't go to the store and buy pectin to make your jellies and jams. They would use a quince with apples or quince with whatever, and it makes this gelatinous kind of thing in there to form the base of your jelly. So the seeds are really crazy. They're in the apple pear family, and they're kind of like stacked like little blood cells almost inside the fruit. Instead of one each section, there's like 6 or 7. I broke them apart and I put them in water, and it just made the water like jelly. And I rinsed them and I soaked them and I rinsed them and I soaked them until there was no more jelly. And I just put them on a paper towel in a little dish with a lid. And I don't know, a few days later they started sprouting. And so there was little plants in there, and I just moved them to the soil. So yeah, some of them aren't, you know, they're not going to make it. These ones, actually, I was going to throw the rest of them out because I had all I wanted. I wanted about 9. Just, you know, you only have so much space for stuff. It's fun to grow stuff anyway. So I had an extra pot with nothing in it, and I transferred the rest of them to there. So it'll be interesting.
Now, how would you use that as pectin then?
So the quince fruit, there's a couple of different ways to go with it. I did an experiment. I did a little research online. There was a couple of different options. I just put the quince fruit, I left the skin on, I cut the seeds out, and the center part of the quince is really woody. I mean, if you go to bite into it, it might hurt your teeth. I did throw some quince in a blender with some apples, and it blends up just fine. You just got to blend it a little extra long. It has a kind of a fruity effervescent to it. You know, it smells different, fruity. And so I put them in a crock pot with a little water and a little honey, and put it on low and cooked it for 12 hours or so, and pretty soon it all breaks down, and I just scooped them out, put them in the blender with none of the liquid. I think I added a little bit of honey. That was the first time, and I blended them up in the blender, and it ends up in this thick paste almost. And so I sweetened it up with a little stevia and put that in a jar, and it sets up like peanut butter almost thicker than peanut butter. And it's kind of fun to, spread on an apple or something when you're eating it. And then the next time I filled the whole crock pot up, half with quince and half with apple, did the same thing, left all the water, and I actually saved the water because it's sweet and it tastes like, thick apple juice or something like that. And same thing, blended it all up, and it made a thick, it was almost like apple butter,
And so you would just add that to like your strawberries or whatever it is you're making your jams out of?
I'll bet if you're gonna make jam, if you would, stew your quince, and then you would mix it with the rest of your fruit, probably you're not gonna cook your strawberries very much when you're doing that. You just want to heat them up a little bit. You could probably mix it in, and it would, I don't can things really.
Right.
So
there's a way though.
Yeah.